from my cramped desk in the lab and watched Dr. Myers storm into my supervisor's office for the third time that week. Their raised voices still carried, but I couldn't make everything out clearly. The gist was still clear enough. Something had gone very wrong with our latest time travel trial, but rather than changes to the past, the alterations were eerily unfolding around us in the present. I shifted in my seat as Myers shouted about a wave of chronoradiation moving along our world line, unpredictably transforming aspects of modern reality as it impacted inside the massive laboratory bay windows. Small details seemed to shift trees, buildings, even parked cars wavered and became suddenly different models, with a cascade of subtle changes rippling outward through the chaotic cityscape over the last few minutes. Dr. Stephen Grant slammed his office door after Dr. Myers left, his usually immaculate dark hair now sticking out wildly as he obsessively ran his hands through it. Around me, the other techs tried to pretend they didn't notice modern reality glitching and morphing outside. As the most junior team member, I knew the higher-ups would never tell me anything voluntarily. Eventually, Dr. Grant re-emerged from his office and headed straight for the liquor cabinet, without even glancing at the rest of us. His hand shook slightly as he poured a glass and took a large gulp. Hesitantly, I made my way over. "So, I'm guessing the trial didn't go quite as planned, sir." He let out a strained chuckle at my characteristic understatement. "That's putting it mildly. When we sent cameras back to document the construction of the Great Pyramids, it seems we dragged some chronal energy forward with the footage, like tires picking up mud, and now it's splashing all over our present." I struggled to grasp what he was implying as I stared out at a cherry-red vintage Mustang twisting shape into a curved, single-piece podcraft below in the parking lot. "You mean witnessing the past? Change today's reality, just watching the pyramids shift something fundamental in the timeline?" I asked tentatively. If only we had listened to Myers' warnings. Grant muttered as he drained his glass. He kept lecturing us that the present was simply the trailing temporal wake of the past, so they couldn't be disconnected without disrupting causal flow. I nodded slowly. Of course, if the present was just the record of accumulated impacts echoing forward, then contamination leaking backwards would ripple ahead too. Myers had argued viewing pivotal historic focal points risked conveying quantum contamination to their consequences downstream. So by studying the pyramids' creation, we must have imported exotic chronal energies into their implied future endpoint, modern day. And now a blast front of uncalculated causality mutations was sweeping over the world in response. Grant refilled his glass with shaking hands. "The board is shutting us down completely and burying all records of this catastrophic idiocy, of course. Can't risk public panic as their reality transforms unpredictably around them, thanks to us." He turned to stare forlornly out the window. My heart broke for this brilliant, visionary man who just wanted to solve time travel's paradoxical mysteries, only to lose control of the immense power instead. "What if I told you I think there might be a way to still set things right, sir?" I said softly. Grant barked another strained laugh. "I'd say you always were my most creative thinker. So sure, let's hear this Hail Mary hypothesis of yours." I took a deep breath and laid out my theoretical strategy. If erasing records of our actions might allow observers to remain blind to the timeline damage, maybe we could encourage that. Remove the origin anchor tying the contamination to us, letting it drift free as an inexplicable anomaly. Publish falsified data showing our failure to ever achieve past viewing time travel. And if parallel quantum worlds theoretically exist for each branching option, perhaps we could use the still functional equipment to shift our consciousness into an adjacent reality where we lacked ability to impact the past in the first place. Allow this world line to collapse while migrating laterally to keep working elsewhere. His eyes took on a manic gleam of desperate hope as I explained further. In the end, Grant agreed my suggestions seemed the only possibility left to save our work from permanent cancellation, and rescue reality itself from the unintended side effects we had recklessly inflicted upon it. Over the next 72 hours, we sabotaged lab records and published forged documents indicating fraud allegations that shuttered the project. Then we activated the quantum core, programmed coordinates for the nearest lateral shift, and stepped together onto the launch pad, glancing back with tears in my eyes as swirling energy engulfed everything. I silently wished this damaged world line a peaceful ending free of our dangerous meddling at last. And as we tunneled across the quantum foam into another version of reality, where today I again stood watching in a cramped corner desk, I vowed to myself that this fresh start would lead down better paths.